The Adventures of Dougal by Eric Thompson. Read by Richard Wilson. Side 1, Dougal and the Missing Link. Dougal was in bed thinking about not being in bed. To rise or not to rise? That is the question. "Good morning, Gossamer," said Brian, arriving as snails do, completely silently. "I didn't hear you knock." "I have things to tell," said Brian. "I am the bearer of tidings. I am the fleet-footed messenger of the garden." And while Dougal made himself a cup of tea, Brian told him the news. Zebedee hadn't been seen for some time. "So Florence sent me to get you, because you would know exactly what to do," she said. "Naturally I know," said Dougal loftily. Florence was waiting at Zebedee's house. "I'm very worried," she said. "I've knocked, but there's no answer, and no one's seen him anywhere else, so he must be here." Dougal considered the case. "He doesn't answer the door, so he can't be here, and if he's not anywhere else, and he's not here, he must be, Brian interrupted. "Why don't we look inside? He may have left a farewell note." "There's no need to get dramatic," said Dougal. "But there may be something in what you say." And he backed off several paces. "What are you doing, old thinker?" said Brian. "I am going to rush at the door and break it down. Any objections?" "Only one," said Brian. "Name it." "The door might not be locked." Florence tried it. It wasn't. "Hello," called Florence. "Anyone home?" "Go away," said a voice. "I'm not receiving today." It was Zebedee. He was lying in bed with his hands over his face and looking very sad and odd. "You look very sad," said Florence. "I'm sad because I look odd," said Zebedee. "And I look odd because—" Zebedee took his hands away from his face. "Good gracious," said Florence. "Fancy," said Brian. Zebedee had no moustache. "That was a close shave," said Dougal, giggling. "My moustache has been stolen." "Bare-faced robbery," said Dougal, giggling again. "Will you hush, Dougal?" said Florence severely, and with Dougal hushed, Zebedee told the story. "It is not generally known," he said, "that my moustache is a false one. Not only that, it is a magic one." Whoa, oh, whoa. Florence realized the seriousness of the situation. "We will find it," she cried. "Come on, you two." They left Zebedee lying in bed making little groaning noises and went in search of the missing moustache. "We'll go in all directions and look for clues," said Florence. Brian sped away. "Hurry, Dougal," said Florence, also speeding off. "Caw, caw." "What?" said Dougal. "What?" "Caw, caw." Dougal looked round and then up. On the topmost branch of the tree was a crow. "Caw, caw." "You're making a lot of noise," said Dougal, "and your moustache is slipping." He sat down to think. A moustache! Dougal leapt to his feet and ran round the tree 8 times. "Come down, you thief," he screeched. "Crows don't have moustaches." "Caw, caw, caw." Dougal was furious. "All right, my friend," he said grimly. "You have raised the fighting spirit of the clan Dougal. Be prepared to accept the consequences." And he started to climb. Now, dogs don't normally climb trees, but Dougal was no normal dog. The important thing is not to look down, he thought. He looked down and nearly fell off. The height was fearsome. "Steady, Dougal, steady, be brave, pretend you're a cat." "What am I saying?" Not much like a cat, more like a dog trying to be a cat and not enjoying it very much, but he finally reached a branch just below where the crow was sitting. "Got you," panted Dougal. The crow looked at him. "Caw!" it said, and flew off. Dougal sat wobbling on his branch. Florence and Brian arrived back. "Dougal's not here yet," said Florence. "I hope he's not lost himself." "I expect he has, great shaggy thing," said Brian. "I heard that. You wait." "Dougal, you're up a tree," said Florence. "I know I'm up a tree. I'm not entirely without a sense of direction." "How did you get up a tree?" said Florence. "I flew," said Dougal sarcastically. "Well, come down. We have something to show you." It's all very well saying, "Come down," but it's easier said than done, you know. Florence and Brian consulted together. "Perhaps shaking the tree a little bit might dislodge him," suggested Brian. "Will you two stop muttering and do something?" shouted Dougal. "There's a nest up here and 2 birds in it are giving me very funny looks. Ah, now they're offering me a worm. Ugh. Ah. There was a long wailing cry, and Dougal arrived on the ground beside Florence and Brian. "We were supposed to be looking for Zebedee's moustache, not climbing trees," said Florence. "Anyway, we found it. A crow gave it to us." They went back into Zebedee's house and gave him his moustache. "I am pathetically grateful," he said, as he put it on, "and to prove it, I will provide delights." He muttered a few magic words, and a magnificent feast appeared. "Tell me, old matey," said Brian, "why were you up that tree?" "I would rather not discuss it. Pass me another bun." "You've had 4, said Brian. "So who's counting?" said Dougal. Dougal and a Mystery. "Arise, Sir Dougal," said the Queen. Dougal arose. "Hurrah for Dougal!" shouted a huge crowd. Dougal bowed. "Dougal for Prime Minister!" Dougal waved a paw. "Wake up, Dougal," said Florence. Dougal woke up. "You are rotten," he said. "I was having a particularly lovely dream." "What about?" said Florence. "What about?" said Dougal. "Oh, this and that. Nothing much. Is it time to get up?" "It's been time to get up for hours. The birds have been awake for ages." "That's their problem. Would you like a cup of tea? I'm having one, and a bicky." He made Florence a cup of tea, and she told him there was a problem in the garden. "This is serious. It's about the flowers." "Tell me all," said Dougal. "Want some toast?" "I'm not sure we have time for toast." "No time for toast. Nothing's that serious." And he put some toast in the toaster. "Now, Dougal, you must be serious and listen." "Marmalade?" "Thank you. Someone's been eating all the flowers." Dougal tried to look concerned and failed. You don't seem very concerned." "Oh, I am. I love flowers. I have marigolds in my window box. Look." Florence looked. "You haven't," she said. Dougal looked. His marigolds were no longer there. "What? How dare they? After them! How can you eat toast with the garden crumbling about you? To arms!" Florence got up. "Come along then, we'll go and investigate." They went out. "Wait," said Dougal, going back in. Florence waited. Dougal came back. He was wearing a long cape, a deerstalker hat, and smoking a large bendy pipe. "Might as well do it properly. Come, Watson." They looked at the evidence. Dougal's marigolds had all gone, even the stalks. It may be an international gang. Have you been in touch with Interpol? I thought I'd better come to you first, said Florence. Very wise. And he nodded his head wisely. They ranged further. Here and there was a trampled tulip or a bruised bluebell to show that something or someone had passed that way, but there wasn't a single flower standing proud. They went on. Suddenly they came upon something odd. A small clearing in the garden, which had normally been full of flowers, was now empty except for a patch of yellow ones in the middle. Florence inspected them. Cowslips. Oh, are they? Oh, are they indeed? Yes, they are, said Florence. Are they indeed? Ho, ho, are they? Don't keep saying that, Dougal. They're just cowslips. Doesn't that suggest anything to you? Why don't they eat cowslips? Perhaps they don't like them. Dougal smiled. You'll see. Suddenly he pounced on something. Aha! Florence jumped. Aha! Said Dougal again. We're onto them. Florence looked. In a little patch of bare earth was a footprint. I might have known, said Dougal. Come on, quick, before she gets away. He raced on, and Florence followed. Dougal finally skidded to a halt behind a tree and peered round. Look! And Florence, panting, looked. It was Ermentrude. She was munching away at a patch of primroses, and beside her, eating daisies, was another cow wearing a trilby hat. A herd, said Dougal. Call the Lone Ranger. Don't be silly, it's only Ermentrude. What about her friend? She looks a bit deadly. I'm going to have a word with them and tell them to stop eating the flowers. Careful, they may charge. Hello, dear thing, said Ermentrude. How are you? And how's your little furry friend Donald? Dougal. I'm called Dougal, and I'm not little and furry. Well, you're not big and bald, are you, darling? But we won't quibble. I'd like to introduce my friend Janice. She's paying me a visit, so I'm showing her round. Florence said hello to Janice. Tell them about the flowers, hissed Dougal. Ermentrude, may I have a word with you? Of course, dear thing, as many as you like. Well, said Florence, leading her to one side, I don't want to seem unkind, especially as you have a friend with you, but it is a rule that we don't eat the flowers in this garden. It's a strict rule, said Dougal, and it applies to all. Ermentrude looked very abashed. My dears, I don't know what to say. I'm covered in confusion. And primrose juice. Janice, my dear, we've been very naughty. We've eaten forbidden fruit. And forbidden primroses, said Dougal, not to mention buttercups, daisies, and my marigolds. Ermentrude and Janice were very contrite when they realized just how much of the garden they had lain bare. Got carried away, said Ermentrude. Florence told them they mustn't get carried away again, and that from now on the flowers must not be eaten. Ermentrude promised Florence that they would be good in future, however strong the temptation. That's splendid, said Florence. And now we'll all go back to Dougal's house for a cup of tea. But I haven't got a thing in. I'm not prepared. There's not a cake baked, not a bicky in the tin. Oh, we don't want biscuits, silly boy, said Ermentrude. We'll just pick a few flowers on the way. And she laughed. Ermentrude, you are dreadful, said Florence. I know, dear, said Ermentrude. Dougal and the Garden Navy. Dougal was up and about. It was a bright, sunny morning, and he was just finishing his 7th cup of tea and his 14th biscuit when he heard shouting outside. Obviously an anti-government riot, he thought, pouring another cup of tea. I will not get involved. "Come out, Dougal!" shouted a voice. Dougal opened the door just as Florence was about to bang on it again with a large megaphone. "Oh, good, Dougal, you're awake." "Awake? I'll never be able to sleep again. What's the meaning of all this?" He looked round. There was Florence dressed in a pith helmet and a sailor suit. There was Brian with flags flying from both horns, and there was Dylan in bell-bottom trousers. There was Mr. Rusty banging a drum, and there was Ermentrude wearing a sailor hat with "Kiss Me Quick" written on it. "It's Navy Day, old Admiral," said Brian, "and we're all going to launch our boat." "He's right," said Florence, "and we brought you the captain's hat." Dougal tried not to seem too pleased. Where is this fighting vessel?" "Over there." Dougal took the megaphone from Florence and tied it under his chin. "Keep in step," he shouted. "No talking in the ranks, remember Nelson." And the procession moved off, Dylan playing his bagpipes, Mr. Rusty banging the drum, and Brian singing a sea shanty and occasionally letting out a piercing whistle. "Isn't it exciting?" breathed Florence. "If you can stand the noise," said Dougal. "How much further to the sea?" "Oh, we're not going to the sea, we're going to Mr. McHenry's." "But Mr. McHenry doesn't live by the sea," said Dougal. "So how can we launch a boat?" "Oh, don't quibble," they said. "Captains shouldn't quibble. On, on." The procession arrived at Mr. McHenry's, and he was there to meet them wearing an admiral's hat. Dougal sat down firmly. "Now, just a moment. One, I have been invited to a nautical venture, right?" "Right," they said. "The boat is somewhere here, right?" "Right," they said. "But this is not the sea, right?" "Right," they said. "So a boat won't be of any use, right?" "Wrong," they said. "Come and see." And there, in Mr. McHenry's field, was the boat. It had masts, a funnel, 2 anchors, and a rudder to steer with. Everyone except Dougal went on board and waited. Brian said, "Go!" and Dylan played his bagpipes while Dougal walked slowly up the gangplank. "Quiet, quiet!" shouted Brian. "All be quiet!" Dougal assumed an attitude of importance on the bridge. "Crew members, far be it from me to stifle the spirit of enterprise, but I feel I must point out that this boat, in common with other boats, does need water to make it go. We have no water. Therefore it won't go. I would welcome suggestions." He looked round. "I think we'd better call Zebedee," said Florence, and she did. "As I see it," said Zebedee, "there are 2 alternatives. We either get the boat to the water or the water to the boat. Getting the boat to the water will take time, and getting the water to the boat will take a miracle, so—" He paused and looked at the boat. "Perhaps a 3rd alternative." And he muttered a word or two. "There you are," he said, and he left. They looked round. Nothing seemed to have changed. "Nothing's changed," said Dougal. "What did he do?" They rushed from side to side, looking about them, and as they did so, the boat moved a little, then a little more. They looked over the side. "It's got wheels!" they shrieked. "Hurrah!" Dougal looked very upset. "My first command, a boat with wheels. I'll never live it down in Pompeii." "Stop moping," said Florence. "We must get under way." "And how do you propose getting under way, Bossy Boots? We may have wheels, but we don't have an engine." "It's simple," said Dylan. "We need a pull or a push." And he dropped off to sleep. "Who's going to volunteer?" said Dougal. "You're the captain," they said. "It's up to you to keep the ship sailing." So Dougal, wishing he had never been elected captain, went over the side, took hold of a rope, and began to pull. The guard and navy moved slowly along, but suddenly Dougal found that the pulling had got a little easier. He let go of the rope, and the boat continued to move. It was going downhill and beginning to pick up speed. "Excuse me," shouted Dougal. "You're the captain," they laughed. "All right then," said Dougal, and he sat down and watched. Ahead there was a gleam. It was the sun shining on water. The guard navy was about to launch itself. The boat hit the water with a great splash, shot out in the middle of the pond, and sank. Luckily the water was very shallow, and the boat settled on the bottom, leaving the deck sticking up out of the water. On board, the crew felt very sorry for themselves. "Scuppered," said Brian mournfully. "Sunk without trace," said Ermintrude inaccurately. So they came ashore, all wet and muddy. "Oh, come on," said Dougal. "You'd better come back to my place for baths and a cup of tea." "Oh, you're so good to us, Captain, sir," said Brian. "Don't push your luck," said Dougal. Dougal, RSPCA. Dougal was fast asleep and dreaming, as usual, of glory. He dreamed he was leading a charge against a castle belonging to a particularly wicked giant. Bang, bang, bang went the cannon. "On, on," shouted Dougal. Bang, bang, bang. Dougal was suddenly awake, but the guns were still going. Bang, bang, bang. It was someone knocking at the door. "Oh, all right, I'm coming," shouted Dougal, and he heaved himself out of bed and opened the door. There was no one there. "What? I thought someone was knocking." "Someone was," said a voice. Dougal looked up. It was a butterfly. "Was that you knocking?" "Who else?" said the butterfly. "May I come in?" "Oh, I think you'd better," said Dougal. So the butterfly came in and settled on the back of a chair. "Want some tea?" "Butterflies don't drink tea." "Of course," said Dougal. "Silly of me. Have you called for any particular reason, Mr. Dougal blushed. "The name's Stokely, and I want you to sign my petition." "Petition?" "Against butterfly hunting." Dougal choked on his tea and pushed his butterfly net under the sofa with his paw. "Of course I'll sign." There was another knock on the door, and Florence and Brian came in with butterfly nets. "Ready to go?" said Florence. What are you talking about?" "Butterfly hunting. It's today." Dougal leapt to his feet, making a loud clatter with his cup and saucer. "Oh, yes," he laughed. "A joke. Ha, ha." Brian and Florence looked puzzled. "Yes, what a joke. May I introduce an acquaintance of mine?" Ha, ha. Florence and Brian looked, saw the butterfly, and tried to hide their nets behind them. Stokely fluttered his wings and looked at them extremely hard. Florence was very ashamed. "I feel very ashamed," she said. We were going chasing butterflies, but I didn't realize anyone felt strongly about it." "Butterflies feel very strongly about it," said Stokely. They all settled down, and Stokely explained about his petition. As he said, butterflies were used to being chased, and he had himself sometimes quite enjoyed it, but it had now got out of hand and must be stopped. "Butterflies are peace-loving creatures and shouldn't be chased," he said, and they agreed. "Butterflies add beauty to the world," he said, and they agreed. agreed. "So, sign my petition," he said, and they agreed and signed. Stokely thanked them and said he'd better be on his way, as he had a lot of people to call on. Florence opened the door. The garden was looking beautiful. The flowers were all in bloom, and here and there a butterfly was sipping nectar. "It's all so peaceful," said Florence. "So peaceful." "Ah!" screeched Dougal. "Look!" There, somewhere away, was a figure. It was holding a net and creeping up on something. "A butterfly chaser," said Florence. "Let's leap on him," said Brian. But they were too late. The figure pounced with his net and rushed off. "After him!" shouted Dougal. "Come on, men!" "Men?" said Florence. "Oh, don't quibble," said Dougal, and he raced off. They followed fast and gradually caught up with the figure carrying the butterfly net. "Good heavens!" said Florence. "It's Mr. McHenry." Mr. McHenry stopped and put the butterfly net down. "Now's our chance," said Florence. They crept up to the net. Inside, looking a little pale, was Stokely. "Come out," said Dougal. "I can't," said Stokely. "I'm hooked up." Dougal bravely pushed his way into the net. Stokely, unhooked, flew out, but before Dougal could get out, Mr. McHenry picked up the net, put it over his shoulder, and left. So they followed. Dougal was in a bit of a quandary and a lot of discomfort. He didn't dare make a noise, and Mr. McHenry might drop the net, so he decided to wait and see. "It's a far, far better thing," he sighed. "I wonder where he's going," said Florence. She soon found out. Mr. McHenry stopped at his greenhouse, put down the net without looking at it, and went in. The others rushed up to Dougal. "Are you all right?" they said. "You mean apart from being in this net?" "Look out," said Stokely. "He's coming back." They rushed behind a bush and watched. Mr. McHenry went to pick up the net, saw Dougal, and stopped. "Good morning," said Dougal. "Ah, good morning," said Mr. McHenry. "Lost something?" said Dougal. Yes," said Mr. McHenry. He looked over his shoulder. "Seize him!" shouted Dougal, and the others rushed out and seized him. "What do you mean by catching butterflies? Explain." So Mr. McHenry explained. It was all very simple. He had lots of flowers in his greenhouse, and he needed a few butterflies to eat the nectar. "So I thought I'd catch them and bring them here," he said. Stokely decided that Mr. McHenry had acted with the best intentions, so he forgave him and promised to visit every day with a few friends. "All's well that ends well," said Florence. "Perhaps you'd all join me for tea," said Mr. McHenry, and they went in and shut the door. "What about me?" screeched Dougal. Florence came out with some scissors. "Sorry we forgot you, Dougal," she said brightly, cutting him free. "Good of you to bother. I don't suppose there's any tea left." "We might find you a little something," said Florence. "Come along."